to introduce our speaker today. Mr. Dennis King is the Director of Access Small Business Development Center and the Enterprise Foundation. He's managed and facilitated over $140 million in loans and equity to local small businesses, as well as wrote and distributed over $12 million in small business grants. He's also the executive director of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Silicon Valley, and on staff for over 25 years. He's like a local legend, I think. And I've just started working with him on an SBDC and City of Cupertino partnership to offer SBDC seminars to local small businesses here in Cupertino, and would like to announce that we have an Access to Capital seminar coming up on Tuesday, June 18th. From 10 until whenever it takes us, but it's like scheduled from 10 to 11:30. So I invite anybody who's interested to come to that. Dennis is also a member and co-chair of the Chamber of Coalition Silicon Valley, a board member of the San Jose Chamber of Commerce, board member and state parliamentarian of the California Hispanic Chambers of Commerce, and a member of the numerous other boards and advisory councils. He is a former business owner in the general construction and magazine publishing. Dennis was educated, he's a total local guy, San Jose State University and Foothill College, where he was student body president, of course, of both campuses. So welcome, Dennis. Would you like to say a few words before we spool up the video?
And one way you may have shared too much about me, but on the other hand, some things that I haven't shared much, I'm in the room, in your office room, looking at pictures of people cutting and picking apricots. So I'm surprised I still have my fingers. I've cut so many apricots growing up here. This actually was my favorite time of the year because, Los Altos alone had 7 million apricot trees. Cupertino had apricot trees, cherry trees, plum trees. It was a beautiful place to grow up. It's still fascinating in an entirely different reason, so I'm very impressed with that. But it brings back lots of memories. So I'm looking at the store. It says Union Store, and I guess looking back, it would be a reunion for me. So it's the air at the time. You mentioned that you had watched people jog by, with stuff in their ears as they're listening to their cell phone or listening to something, and I'm thinking they're missing on the joy of being here. This area was and continues to be an amazing place to live. I grew up, it was an unincorporated area that could very easily have become Cupertino, but I think the local people determined it would be Los Altos, but it was right there on the fence. I went to local high schools as well. My brother, I had to laugh because earlier this year I reread a rather thick book about Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. I think anybody who has anything to do with Cupertino should invest a little bit of time and have some reading on Jobs and the founding of Apple Computer. Jobs himself was a classmate of my brother at Homestead High School, so my brother knew him well, and it's a very humbling lesson to think that at the time my brother was a very popular athlete, went on, had a very nice family. He's dealing with some serious health issues right now, but he had a good life wrapped around his family and the community. Steve Jobs in high school was probably the antithesis of an athlete. Long-haired, drug-using person who wanted nothing to do with his classmates, was downright rude to people, and yet somehow he had a genius that really changed the world. So it was amazing to see. The lesson, I think, is not to judge quickly about people. But it's a good read, and it brought back a lot of memories all around. Today, I don't think, especially concerning, I also need to thank Marianne with the League of Women Voters. One of the things that I did at Foothill College, actually, before I was at Foothill, during Foothill College, I led a campaign, started here in California, then we teamed up across the nation to change the Constitution of the United States. And we did. And that was the 26th Amendment to lower the voting age to 18. and my headquarters was Foothill College. So, and I had great respect for the League of Women Voters. They took it on. Now, this is, I hate to say it, now over 50 years ago, who took it on and did a great job of orchestrating community dialogue about that particular issue. And I saw a lot of parallels then in terms of women seeking the vote, the 50 years before that, and to have young people try to do the same thing. So thank you, Marianne, for what you do with the League of Women Voters. I greatly appreciate it. I know it made a big difference in my life, and I hope the legacy that we're all doing makes this area, our community, a better place to live.
That's our job.
I could talk, well, I think it's more than a job. I think that's our life. So I did have a chance. I see one of your board members is Rod Dearden Jr. When his father was on the Board of Supervisors, I was working for the Board of Supervisors. And based on the Vote 18 experience, based on working for the Board of Supervisors, it really looked like my life, my career was going to be about government and politics. But my real passion was small business. And I come from a family of small business owners. And while politics continues to be of interest to me, my real passion was small businesses. So I left that. And for those of you that's been around a while, know that the land space between San Jose and San Francisco that is often called Silicon Valley, in our day it was called the Peninsula. So I was a publisher of Peninsula Magazine and got involved in the Peninsula Marketing Association and Peninsula Advertising Association. And those are now ancient terms. But what I liked about it, especially back in the 80s, Silicon Valley was just emerging as a national player. So I had a joyful experience to interact from a marketing perspective of a lot of the personalities that actually formed Silicon Valley. So it's been fascinating to see the transformation. The other thing that is very important to realize, the demographic change. The 1970 census in 1970 indicated that the population in Santa Clara County in 1970 was 84% white European American. 84%. The last census showed that the white European American population was 34% and dropping. The world has changed, and for some that was fearful. For me, I thought it was extraordinarily exciting to live in an area that's really the face of the world and to interact with so many cultures, to learn from so many people, to experience so many different kinds of food. I mean, that's an extraordinary blessing. So the joy for me has been my surrounding of a group of people that share my passion for serving the community and helping empower small business entrepreneurs get access to the resources and information they need to be successful. But more than just educating about how to do that is to listen to their life experience, to listen what they bring to this community and how they have become such a fundamental part of that community. So I hope whatever we're sharing in this little bit of time that we have together, it's not me giving a lecture, it's us having a dialogue, having a conversation. Mike, you sound like you're in a great spot where you're probably dealing with lots of entrepreneurs. Is that
Absolutely
a reasonable assessment?
That's
Yes.
the plan. I mean, with a combination of the local entrepreneurs with the with the more credit tenants that we have deals with across our portfolio, regionally and beyond. So it's a good mix.
Well, I'd like to think it's worthy of a side conversation in person at some point, because I'd love to hear more in terms of what you're experiencing, what you're hearing, what their challenges are, and to see to what extent that we might be able to participate and help. As a thumbnail background of what we did, what I realized some years ago, the more I got involved with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, was that the traditional model of chambers of commerce needs to change. We're at that, I think, really awkward stage in our history locally and nationally, that we're going through a period of transition. We have those of us that have survived COVID, we're now into what they were expecting to be called the new normal. I'm not still very clear what the new normal is. I know it's similar to what was there before, but things have changed. And I think those of us, especially in chambers of commerce, that are trying to continue to be an advocate for our members, for our communities, we too need to change. It's hard exactly to know the best way forward, and that's why having these kinds of discussions, I think, are so important, not just for the give and take of now, but in terms of what we, as a community, define ourselves as, where we define where are the needs and how do we move forward as a community. So even if there's just a few of us, I thank you all for being here, and I look forward for that discussion. In that process, about 15 years ago, I realized for serving immigrants to this area, the traditional Chamber of Commerce doesn't really fit exactly. They don't, most of them come from countries where chambers of commerce are either an agency of the government or they don't exist. And they're not really clear in terms of what does it mean to be an advocate. To have people who are not in the government but are on their side and that can interact on their behalf to the government agencies that regulate their businesses and regulate their lives. So I see fundamentally, in my opinion, chambers of commerce are about advocacy and access, advocating on behalf of their members and the overall community, but also advocating to one another. For us, access was access, again, to information and resources to help people succeed in business. So that if they do need funding to establish their business or to grow their business, they need to know how to do that. And what I've seen over and over again is that they really don't. And frequently, we set the stage with sometimes our best of intentions, is that we're giving information that is not only incorrect, it can also be harmful. Yesterday, I was listening to a presentation. I won't mention which bank, but it's a national bank, and was asked to come in, and they described the program to about 30 women immigrants who are starting their business, and they had promoted the event as an access to capital event for startups. And they had this one particular bank make the presentation. And what the organizers didn't seem to realize is that mainstream banks, in terms of bank loans, don't give bank loans unless there's a track record, which means they can't give them a startup a loan, not as a business loan. Now, there might be a home equity loan, there might be other kinds of things to do, but a business bank loan is not going to be possible for at least 2 or 3 years. So here they were promoting a program to connect people to a bank who could not serve their needs. And so it tells me that even among friends and advocates in chambers of commerce, we need to educate them in terms of what is access to capital about and where it fits in. So banks are really good for a number of things. There are other financial resources as well. And so we need to kind of understand and orchestrate to find the best match to serve the needs of the people are where they are right then. Capital is complicated. The giving and taking of funding touches on many different issues. And so I'm looking forward to our workshop where we can go in a lot more depth to people who are actually pursuing that. But one of the things that we did earlier this year was to come up with a 4-minute video that describes what a small business development center does. And Edna, in a few seconds, if I can ask you to share that. What I wanted as a prelude to that is I came to understand that from a Chamber of Commerce, we needed to do more than just simply direct somebody to a bank when they're looking for capital, because it wasn't working. The $140 million that Deb referred to in terms of the loans that we helped facilitate in the equity, the vast bulk of those people that we helped had already been rejected by banks. So that's above and beyond what traditionally takes place. But Deb, if you can share that in terms to give a little bit of our message, I would appreciate it. I don't hear sound though.
Hello, welcome. If you have a small business in Santa Clara County or are starting one, please consider taking advantage of the free business assistance services by our Access Small Business Development Center. Our Access SBDC is part of a nationwide network of experienced and professional business advisors and small business owners who can provide you access to the information and resources needed for your success. Our Access SBDC focuses on the neighborhood businesses.
If you're serious about starting your business, come join us. We can guide you to get your permit, licenses, your EIN number, your DBA.
Here at the SBDC, we can help you to get the GES, to get that loan that you're looking for, either for purchasing real estate, either for working capital, for any needs that you have for your small business, we can help you to get the GES.
We're here to help you get your business loan. We can assist you in preparing your small business for funding. We do it by guiding you to get your business plan, helping you with your cash flow projections, and if necessary, working on your credit repair. So we're here to provide you access to information and resources. We help you organize all the documents necessary for the loan package.
Our Legacy Handoff is one of our many special programs here at the Access SBDC. It's an opportunity for you to pass your legacy on, your dream. And I know sometimes your children, they don't want to follow in your footsteps, and that's okay. But here at the Access SBDC, we can help you pass your legacy on, pass your dream on to someone who's ready to take it on. And we look forward to hearing from you.
We can provide you with a one-on-one business advising, or you can attend to our workshops and webinars, or you can participate to our ongoing training programs.
We also develop marketing plans so to help you refine who your customers are and help you get and retain them so that you can grow your business. We serve neighborhood businesses such as local retail, restaurants, childcare services, personal services such as hair and nail salons and barbershops, auto repair centers, and gas stations.
We can help you be in compliance with the various federal, state, and local city ordinances in managing your employees. And we do so in partnership with the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement and Working Partnerships USA.
Access SBDC has been a critical assistance in the survival of small businesses, especially during the COVID period and after the COVID recovery. We certainly would like to invite everybody to come to La Placita Tropicana because we represent the heart and soul of the Latino community, the first generation immigrants. This is their major stop to America.
One of the many ways in which the County of Santa Clara supports small local businesses is through Access SBDC, the Small Business Development Center. This provides you, the small business owner, with access to resources and information that you need for your small business to succeed. Please check out our free services.
I've had the opportunity to work with Access SBDC for over a decade now, and they've been an integral part of Santa Clara County being able to provide services to the small business community around the county.
Come join us.
We are on your side, so give us a call.
Chúng tôi đứng về phía bạn. Hãy gọi cho văn phòng.
Estamos contigo. Si necesitas ayuda con tu pequeño negocio, estamos para ayudar.
If there's any one message that we'd like to share with you, is that you don't need to be in business by yourself. We can help. Give us a call.
We started talking about the difference between meeting in person and meeting online. One of the things I heard in a conference some time ago about the challenges for small business owners, some say that they needed more management background, and that was a major threat. Some had argued not having enough capital was a major threat. In my opinion, especially since COVID, I think the biggest threat to small business is isolation. It's feeling that they're alone, that they don't know where to go when they do have problems, that if they need to understand how a Chamber of Commerce could work on their behalf, so that if something happens to them that's not fair, they've at least got a place to go. And that's the same attitude that I've been trying to instill in what we're doing with the Small Business Development Center. SBDC is the largest program of SBA, the Small Business Administration. It's usually done by partners. We're the first in California to be done by a Chamber of Commerce. Even though it's the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we don't discriminate. We've been doing it with many different communities, and we do this in partnership with our local chambers of commerce. And thank you, Deb, for your leadership, because I appreciate what you're taking on. You've got actually one of the most lively of the chambers. Most chambers in our communities are suffering like small businesses are, and they're still struggling to redefine and re-energize themselves. And so I think with you and Edna and your team, you're finding viability in spite of the difficulties of the community around. And I feel honored to work with you and working with you on behalf of the small businesses that you represent and serve. I don't think of the three of you that are with us, I don't think you need a lecture about capital. But if you want to talk about it, I'd be more than happy to do so. How can I make our discussion relevant to you? John, Marianne, John, Mike?
I'm personally interested in the trends that you're seeing. Obviously, you alluded to this being a really challenging time for capital formation and for small businesses. I mean, obviously, we're all would love to see a magic elixir that'll allow an idea to turn into a viable enterprise. I'm kind of curious as to what you're seeing at the Access SBDC project that you've got going, and I'm also interested in the structure as to Access SBDC. Are you a nonprofit? Is this how are you funded, and trying to understand a little bit about the platform that you set up. So I don't mean to monopolize the conversation, but
Sure.
That's what I'm curious about.
I'd be glad to talk about that. Marianne, did you have anything in particular?
Well, I'd just like to mention that I participated in the Small Business Development Council services when I started a company that did consulting and software development many years ago. And I just wanted to share how helpful they were in those little details of how to start a business, things like filing taxes, getting a license, how do you make connections within the business community. And the business itself only lasted for about 4 years until I sold it. But the fact that I had people, very expert people at the SBDC to help was a tremendous support system. So thank you.
Thank you for that observation.
Hey Dennis, it's John Tang. You're
Yes,
asking
sir.
for questions. I would like to know, you mentioned advocacy and being kind of a voice for business. I would like to know, kind of from your experience, what's the secret sauce to membership? Like how do you get folks to support you? How do you get folks to to join you, what are you saying to them that's really moving the needle? Because, a lot of folks don't know that there is a Chamber of Commerce in their local community.
That's an extraordinarily relevant question that I think all of our chamber colleagues are dealing with now. Because the reality for chambers of commerce today, post-COVID, is very different than pre-COVID. I think for those of us that grew up in this area or comes from other parts of the United States, you just assumed you start a business, you join a chamber of commerce. It's a natural connection. One leads to the other. The reality is that, today, the number I've been hearing is 50%, but I believe over 60% of the small businesses in Santa Clara County are owned and managed by immigrants, most of whom have no cultural or historic reference to chambers of commerce. So there is a very significant gap. And I think that first of all, we have to recognize that. And then as chambers and as community leaders, we need to say, well, how do we build that bridge? And I strongly suspect that in the early stages, that's going to have to be done one at a time. I think we need to have some intersection in the life of the business and the emerging entrepreneurs. We need to find that intersection where they're listening, where they can see and appreciate the value that a chamber can bring. In my opinion, and that's a discussion in itself. In my opinion, that really critical stage is when the business gets started, because that's when the businesses they have the passion on some idea, they have a vision of what they would like to do, but they may not necessarily know how to do that or how to make those connections. And I think a secret sauce for chamber is to realize the power that it could have to a new entrepreneur is to be a resource base to identify where they can go when they need various things. And it's the whole gamut of things. Access to funding is only part of it. What I've long said is that the best capital doesn't come from a bank. The best capital doesn't come from a credit union or a traditional funding source. The best capital comes from customers. And I think the more small business owners need to realize that the viability of their business is still fundamentally the core of capitalism, is the exchange of values, exchange of acknowledged values. And I think the more the chambers get close to those early dynamics of business formation, you will be creating the value that has long-lasting impact. And I think as the entrepreneur moves through their life cycle of their business, and if they remain connected to their chambers of commerce, I think the answer in the long term is to foster that kind of connectivity. Now, how to do that is kind of the discussion. The chambers are great for ribbon cuttings. I think we need to really examine, well, what does that mean? In a sense, a ribbon cutting is a welcome to the community. And we haven't done that. We're not doing that very well, not very effectively, not very efficiently. Now, when I was a kid here, I remember welcome wagons. Now, most people may not even know what a welcome wagon is, but it was basically a group of business people that put packages together that when you moved into the community, you received a package that from several different businesses that basically said, welcome, that you're here. I believe we need to do that for our small businesses. And I think chambers of commerce are in an ideal position to find where that intersection is and say, welcome to Cupertino. How can we help you? What do you need to do? Where do you go next? To answer more of Mike's question about SBDC, the Small Business Administration got started decades ago, but under the Carter administration, back when was it, 1980, They decided that they needed something more than just policy in small business, and that's where the SBDC program got started. Now, coming from a marketing perspective, I don't really like the term SBDC because nobody really knows what that is. The brilliance of somebody like Steve Jobs is when it came time to doing a computer company, he named it over something simple like Apple, not some mega complex name, but somebody can relate and connect to that right away. At SBDC, we haven't done a good job of being able to do that. It's still confusing, which is too bad because the core of what we do is to connect with people one at a time. Yes, we do webinars. Yes, we do workshops, but the core of it is one-on-one business advising. And again, I'm dating myself, but what I suggest that we do, it's sort of like a map. Most people don't quite know these days, at least young people, what's a map. They have to look at their computer. But when you get a map, usually, and that's usually what chambers used to give out, maps, right? In a sense, we're giving an economic map. And the very first step that we do in SBDC is determine where are they? Where are they? Where are they financially? Where are they in the market? What's the nature of their business? Who are the customers that they have or they want to have? Again, get a good understanding of where they are. The second step is to say, where do you want to go? I mean, let's be clear. What is it exactly that you want to do? You want money? Okay. Why do you want money? What's the purpose of the money? How much money do you need? Let's take a look in terms of saying, let's describe what it is that you're building, right? And that you need a clear idea. What you don't want is you don't want somebody to come in and say, I want money. And then you'd say, well, okay, how much do you need? Or how much do you want? And if they answer, well, how much can I get? It's telling me that they haven't done their homework. They don't really know what the next step is. So they need a pretty clear vision of what is that next step. That's basically what a marketing plan or a business plan is about, is clarifying that next step. Where SBDC fits in and where chambers of commerce could fit in to say, okay, now let's chart out that map to get you there. What do you need to actually do that? So what you heard in the video is the various kinds of things that we could step up to help. I mean, for example, if you go to a traditional bank for a bank loan, they need financial projections, but people need to know some basic assumptions. Banks are not in the business of taking risks. They're not risk-taking. Now, they do it, but they don't. That's not what they're about. They do everything they can to mitigate risk. And so they look at past performance, they look at credit scores, they look at the kinds of indicators about that if they make this loan, are they going to get it repaid and the interest paid and on a timely basis? And if they think that it's not going to happen, they're not going to give the loan. It's that simple. But that means for an entrepreneur, they need to be prepared so that when they do go to the bank, they can indicate, yes, this is it. If they've had a problem in the past, if they've gone through bankruptcy, under COVID, many businesses were closed for a period of time, they need to be upfront to the bank and be able to explain what happened and be able to explain that since then, their behavior is on track and things are moving. So part of what we do is to listen to their story and then map out the steps to get them to where they want to be. Chambers of commerce can not necessarily get into the banking business, but it's the same kind of thing. Why are there mixers? Well, mixers before was an opportunity to connect one-on-one. It was an opportunity to, again, establish the ties to help people get business. And I think we've been losing track of what the essential purpose is. And I think if we can reconnect on that and start connecting to the small businesses, especially in their formative stages, that's going to be a win-win on the long term. To answer more precisely Mike's question on the structure, part of the program we get is funded by the Small Business Administration. it requires a local match. The local match for most of the states came from their state government. California is only in the last few years provided a match. For us, I got matched funding by doing events that generated revenues, as in what we do in chambers of commerce. But instead of directing those resources to the chamber, I did them as a match for the program that we did. But then we also reached out to some of our local communities. Most of the cities, the one city that we were dealing with at the time, did not have a vision of helping their small businesses. It's starting to change since. But the one that really came to our rescue was the county of Santa Clara. So to this day, our match comes from the county of Santa Clara and to another extent, the state of California to the federal government. And the combination of those plus our activities is what generates the revenue. We don't charge for our services. Our one-on-one advising is free. Our workshops, our webinars are free. I didn't want impediments to the business owners who needed help. And when I interacted with them, I did not want them to think that this is a sales pitch because I have something else that they can buy. I just wanted a straightforward conversation to understand from their perspective what we can do to help them. The number one challenge that we've got with most businesses, but especially immigrant businesses, is trust. They need to trust us. And unfortunately, if nobody is telling the vast bulk of small business owners, welcome to our community, and the people who welcome them are, have their own agendas, there's a trust gap that we still have today. And I think that's one of the potential strengths of a Chamber of Commerce, is to recognize that if they can develop that trusting relationship from the very beginning, I think that's going to make a significant difference. John, I can't give you a simple answer, but I think, again, the whole concept of connecting the business owners where they are, establish that trusting relationship, and if they can see a chamber as a go-to resource for whatever they need, even if the chamber can't help them directly, but they can refer them to some place that could help, I think that's the value for chambers of commerce in the future.
That's great, Dennis. Thank you.
Mike, I don't know if I answered enough of your question.
And although I'm always curious about, and maybe I have this all wrong, but that's great that it does seem like you're mission driven to really help small businesses and the business owners form the businesses, which is awesome. I mean, I would say probably, I don't know, 50 to 70% of the smaller mom and pop businesses where we're signing, where we're doing leases in our shopping centers for first time business owners, they all have small business loans. I don't have a sense for how many are advised by particularly well-intentioned actors like Access SBDC versus some of the, private sector for-profit groups that seem to be masquerading as, as friends. And I'm just curious as to, I mean, how do you navigate that? How do you talked about trust? It does seem like there are certainly some players that are really, small business lenders that maybe aren't quite as invested in the successes of the businesses out there as you are. And how do you communicate that to the prospective business owners that all advisors and all groups that purport to advance the same mission that you do aren't necessarily all the same?
Well, even banks aren't all the same, but you're right. A lot of people, especially online, they tell a wonderful story and they make it easy for people to buy into it, but it tends to be a lot more expensive, and it becomes even more expensive if there's any difficulty in paying. So part of it is education. We do a lot of training programs. And so right off the bat, when we say that if you're dealing with financial organizations, understand a difference, and particularly with banks, the difference between a relationship that's based on a transaction or based on a relationship. What I like about traditional banks is the emphasis is on that relationship. And the banks want to deal with their checking accounts, their savings accounts, their other services. They want to develop an ongoing relationship, not just for the life of the loan, but for the life of the business. And that whole orientation is so very different than what you get online. And the danger with people who are not connected to their local communities, are not connected to chambers of commerce, they're only connected by the internet, they have no way of evaluating. And it's so easy to get seduced into something that seems simple, but it's got them caught. And we've run across so many really sad stories of people getting stuck, paying far more than they ever needed to pay, that jeopardizes their business. And if they had only got connected to a more, I don't want to say just a friendly resource, a more reasonable resource. Banks are not non-profitable. They're a business. It's a legitimate, and there's a legitimate level of profit that's expected. Unfortunately, there's too many financial resources, especially connected on the internet, that don't have that attitude. They just try to get as much as they can get and as fast as they can get. And so, again, there's no solid answer for everybody, but it's relationship building. And that means, in my case, it means being involved in the communities. One of the lessons I've learned, especially in the immigrant communities, is if you want the communities to be involved with you, well, you need to be involved with them. And it's that very simple. And by us being engaged in the various communities so that they can see us and can talk to us, that's a beginning spot. The next step might be to borrow credibility. I would think, and how I can borrow community or borrow trust is an example right here with Deb and Edna and her team are doing in terms of developing a trusting position in the community, so that anybody in business in Cupertino should know that if they needed to get some advice that they can trust from somebody who does not have a hidden agenda, that is looking for the welfare of the community, that they can trust the chamber. Well, hopefully that puts us in a position by teaming up with the Cupertino Chamber that we can borrow that trust. And then it would behoove us to make sure that we maintain our trust, not only for the sake of the client, but for the sake of that relationship that we have with the chamber. Chambers can do likewise. Chambers can add their relationship onto those that are trusted as well. That's where the win-win relationship is.
On that question of trust, and this is probably a very, a naive question, or at least I guess, and I could have asked Deb or Edna the same question, but how do chambers work? I mean, you've got, and I guess I'm specifically curious about the connection between local chambers of commerce that I do think, at least, in my experience, are, absolutely trustworthy and mission driven and really are wonderful. And then yet we hear stories about the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Washington throwing their weight around for political interests that I don't necessarily feel very good about. So, and maybe Mary Ann would probably know the answer to this too, but I'm really curious as to the relationship, if any, between local chambers of commerce and, some national organizations that sound the same, but may or may not be different.
You want me to take a hit at that? Dennis?
Yes, Deb, I think that was directed to you. I could make a general comment, but I think it's more specifically to you.
I've learned a lot since I got here, Mike, since I've never run a chamber before, but there's a whole organization of chambers that I just didn't get until I kind of started messing around. So we have our local chamber, Then we have our coalition of chambers, which is just the collection of chambers in Santa Clara County, but also the surrounding counties as well. And we kind of coordinate together, and we're looking at like doing mixers together to try and help our businesses connect wider, because they'll always want to try and expand, and to try and help them do that. Then we're connected with the Cal Chamber, which seems to have the California Chamber, which I find to be pretty credible. Beyond the Cal Chamber, though, like at the US Chamber level, I tend to feel like it's too far away for us to feel like we really have connective tissue with them. For that reason, a lot of chambers, including local ones, tend to go into that four-way of supporting political, like endorsing politicians or people who are candidates for political or elected positions. This chamber has done that in the past. And I think it went sideways, I think probably in 2016 or so. And a lot of them have PACs that are associated with them. And back in about that time, because it went sideways, the PAC associated with this chamber was dissolved. And we no longer endorse and haven't done so since then. And I personally have having been a government employee for 35 years of my, now 36-year career, 37, I've never been able to, nor would I personally endorse candidates. I just don't. And so as the CEO of the chamber, I actually have had to turn down endorsing people for elected office when asked, including board members who are running. They know that we're not going to endorse even them who are on our board who may or may not be running for elected office. So we stay very neutral. We don't go pro, we don't go con, we just say we don't endorse. And you know what? That's kept us pretty safe. Now, people who are part of companies on our board or myself personally, we can go out door to door and do what we're going to do, to support candidates that we support personally. But I personally don't go public about those kind of things. I just go out quietly. If I'm going to do it, I go out quietly and do what I'm going to do. And I vote, of course, like everybody else does. So we tend to stay as a chamber very neutral. But that's been just because it's in my DNA, because I've been in government for so long. So that's that. The U.S. Chamber, I don't know. We contemplated being members for a while. We're not members. We are members of the Cal Chamber, the state chamber. And what we do is we sign on to legislation after I've kind of scanned summaries. We sign on to either support or oppose with them. Typically, they take positions that we like, so we will sign on with them in support, and they typically oppose things that are not good for businesses. So we read through them, and the board has given me authority to sign on their behalf. So that we'll sign on as a chamber to say, yes, we oppose this. If we don't, we just don't sign on.
Yeah, I have to agree with Deb that it is a positive point on the part of the chamber that they are nonpartisan. And of course, League is nonpartisan. That's part of our, not only in our DNA, like Deb's, but also as part of our rules. We cannot be partisan for candidates, and we have never been. We do advocate based on our positions, and our positions are things like guidelines for the death penalty, for example, where we do a study. That study will take 2 to 3 years, and we analyze everything, and then we put together a paper on that position, and we present that paper to our members at our national convention, and the members accept or reject that position. Based on that position, we then can advocate, but that's the extent of our advocacy.
It's helpful. I appreciate it. I just hear some crazy positions that the national or the US chamber takes, and I just get really nervous, and it's good to understand that dues that we or that the fundraising that happens and the sponsorships that happens at the local level don't necessarily or don't contribute to those views.
Yeah, we're
And I was thinking, if I'm confused, then I'm sure a lot more people are that are less knowledgeable and less less involved than I am get confused too.
Yeah, we're sensitive to that, and we, although there are local chambers around here in the county that endorse candidates still. They do.
So,
We're not.
yeah.
Sorry, Dennis, for
I'm
taking us
also-
out of the small business conversation. I didn't.
No. This is very relevant, so I appreciate that, especially this time of the year. So, not all chambers respond the way the Deb is doing. So, some are very actively engaged, not just in terms of endorsements, but their political action committees raise money for sometimes it's causes, but it's usually around candidates. I'm in a debate on that right now with the California Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I've been serving on its board as a state parliamentarian for the last 17 years, and they're all enthused about forming a political action committee. And I'm the only one that's telling them, don't do that. Do not do that. Great to express your opinion about issues, but raising money for candidates is real trouble.
Well,
and I base that on our experiences here. I could point, I won't say out loud who they are, but I know 2 of our local chambers self-destructed because of their political activities. And one is trying to recover, and they're both trying to recover, but they're a pale shadow of what they used to be.
Well, and I just want to add a little something. If you look at our LAC calendar for this year, we've had some candidates for elected office as speakers. And what the rule is, and John knows this, what the rule is, some of those people already have positions as district directors for other elected officials that are already in office. What they do is updates for their district, just to not be confusing, right? Updates for their districts as updates. They cannot campaign on our agendas. So that's why they're there. And I won't let anybody on our LAC agenda who doesn't already serve Cupertino. Right. So you'll see, like, I think coming up is like Ro Khanna, he serves Cupertino. Patrick Erwins was on a couple of meetings ago. He gave a district update for State Assembly, Evan Lowe. There's a number of them. Larry Stone, our county tax assessor, always gives an update in the fall because of the following. So there are elected officials on the LAC calendar, but they always just give their updates, and they always are the ones serving. So you won't see people like, Margaret Abe-Koga, who's running for supervisor, but you could. I mean, Joe didn't ask to get on the LAC calendar, but he would be welcome because he's currently serving. And I believe he has been on the LAC calendar in the past, but
He was.
yeah. So that's the explanation for how our LAC calendar goes, and I just kind of established those boundary conditions for who gets on here. But we have been trying to change topics so that they are more specific to business community topics as we kind of move forward.
That's great. Thank you.
I think what Deb is saying, among other things, is that we learn from each other. Our chambers, I think more now since COVID, is the opportunity for us to connect and just share experiences. And we're in that transition. Again, it's not terribly clear. The future is not terribly clear, but by talking about it, we're able to think, well, what seems to work best for the communities that we're serving? And I think being engaged in the community is good, but staying out of the campaign element is probably the wisest course, because we want to be a chamber for the whole community, not just for a particular faction.
And it gets crazy in Cupertino. We know it's crazy. So everybody batten down the hatches as we go in. It's going to be
thankfully a little less crazy now, but
the election is going to get crazy. It's
right.
crazy. We used to call it the federal level. We call it silly season. Everyone just batten down the hatches and stay, keep coloring, keep your head down and keep coloring. But yeah, it's going to get nutty. It's election season. I'm so glad I'm not city manager during election season. It's already been there, done that already. But
Yeah,
John was,
we are preparing for a very busy time.
yes, it'll be interesting. But John was asking Dennis about the membership stuff because you hit the nail right on the head. Our businesses in Cupertino are very immigrant heavy. Our population is very immigrant heavy. It's about 68% foreign-born Asian of all kinds. And so we literally gave out a membership drive package to our executive board, our officers, as a membership drive, both in English and Chinese, and are trying to figure out how to reach all of our businesses, large and small, as a campaign for this year so that we go into 2025 a little healthier. And so I'm figuring out my portion of the campaign, and Edna and I are trying something new on LinkedIn. We're a little bit nervous, but we're going to give it a shot, and trying to figure out how to go into 2025 a little healthier. So
you're also working very closely with Daniel at the Economic Development Office.
yes,
And
yes.
not all chambers have got a good relationship with their local cities.
Well,
So,
we didn't until more recently. We just signed the very first city chamber agreement in perhaps the history of the city and the chamber. And Daniel, I credit Daniel a lot. He preceded me in this position by maybe a day or two. We signed on almost exactly the same day. Neither of us actually authored any of the words in the agreement, and we're having to execute it. He's a great guy. Easy to partner with him. Yep. It really easy to partner with him. And he's from Milpitas, has a great attitude. And we're just trying to muscle through the agreement. In fact, the agreement's right here, verbatim, right here, as I muscle through it and having to prepare the very first quarterly report. It's typical government ease though, and I think I'm the one that can say that. So we'll see how it goes. I've just issued.
Yeah, but there are lessons even in that exercise. So I think you're in the midst of crafting a very good win-win relationship with your city. Historically, your chamber has not always had a good relationship with your community,
Definitely not.
with your city.
Definitely not. In fact, it was the opposite. Yeah.
When I was part of it is.
Yeah, when I was at the city and the chamber was here, the relationship was kind of non-existent, and so from that perspective, I kind of didn't know what the proper relationship ought to be, right? It was very odd. So
yeah, this is a semi-private conversation, even though we're doing it on the internet.
We can do it. I don't care.
The first grant program that we did was for the city of Sunnyvale, because they had never done anything like it before, and then we were immediately asked by friends in Cupertino to do it with Cupertino, and we were explicit. And my first reaction is to say, "Great, let's get the chamber involved," and we were said, "No, don't even talk to them." So that's when I realized, oh, there's a gap here. But you and your team, Deb, has really built, I think, sounds like a pretty strong bridge. And so compliments for you, honestly, in terms of doing that. I think the next step is to take advantage of that bridge. And again, the trust building, the reaching out to the community in a win-win situation. So congratulations.
Yeah, but I don't speak Chinese, Dennis, so it's hard.
Well,
yeah, we'll figure it out. We're working on it.
Trust comes in different languages.
It does. It does. And there's always Google Chat, so we'll figure it out. Google Translate.
Yeah, but usually when you have that language and culture difference, what they usually measure and build trust is on performance. What are you doing? And how are you doing it? And so I think that's your strength.
Yeah, it's going, I think, pretty well. Our mixers are really taking off. The last one we had was the biggest one ever, the liveliest one ever. I think it's getting there. It's getting there. So that's our first program, Ed.
There are very, very few mixers are successful in our local chambers, including our own. So we used to, before COVID, is when we put together festival that would bring our various chambers together. We usually had well over 1,000 people that participated. We've got I thought a very exhausting but really satisfying event to do. But I don't see the signs of chambers mixers anywhere close to collaboration with others that comes anywhere close to that kind of connectedness yet. So I'm watching carefully to see how are our colleagues doing and what's going on in their communities. And I see we still have a way to kind of go to bring people together.
Yeah, I'm in conversation with Mountain View and Campbell. Maybe together, maybe each one separately to do a couple of mixers together. Regional mixers. Be nice.
Next to me, Campbell's got the longest serving CEO for a chamber. He's been there for 5 years.
He's also a Monte Vista High School graduate. Go Matadors.
Okay.
Yeah.
But some other cities locally that we won't talk about are seriously hurting right now.
Well, we should mix with them. Bring them along.
You got to find the people to mix, though. So,
Well, we'll find them.
but
Gotta be something.
we will.
We'll take that offline, Dennis. You tell me which ones are hurting, and we'll go hunt them down.
Sounds good. I'd be delighted to work with you on that. I think that pretty much answers today. I mean, we could talk international philosophy, but I thank your participants for the direct conversation that we have, and I'm certainly looking forward to continuing a strong working relationship with you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you, everybody. Any other questions for Dennis?
Oh, thank you very much, Dennis. That was very, very enlightening.
Thank you so
Brandon.
much.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Thank
Look forward
Mike,
to seeing you
John,
again soon.
thank you.
Yeah.
I do too. Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you, everybody.